So, what we're going to talk about this um, this semester and what we're going to be working on are what we call advanced exposition. But essentially, all that boils down to is the essay. Now, the word essay has gotten a terrible reputation because for many years when people think essays, they think that moment when your teacher says, "All right, class, we're going to write an essay." And it's this dry thing, you have no interest in it. But that's actually not the history of the essay. All the other forms of the essay derive out of this approach to self discovery that we're going to be focusing on this semester. We're going to be looking at advanced exposition as the traditional essay. And the traditional essay is about 500 years old. It comes from the French word essay, which means to try or to attempt. Matter of fact, we have a different spelling of the same word, ASSAY, in English today, which is to assay. Uh, uh, um, like if you were a soldier and you were going to try to take a hill, you would assay that hill. You'd be going after it, trying to attempt it. And an essay is the same thing. An essay is an attempt. What is it an attempt at? The word essay in French comes from the Latin word exagere, which means to weigh, to sift or winnow, to pick through. And today we get the word exegesis out of the same word. So the word essay and exegesis, Exegesis, they come from the same root word, and it's a slow, deliberate consideration of a topic. So here's the question: what is the essay an attempt at? What is this topic we're trying to winnow through? Well, historically, what the great essayists have tried to do is to simultaneously tackle some big idea and to do so by plumbing their own depths. So it's a combination of personal essay, external essay. So the best essays use aspects of the writer's own life to try to essay some big topic, some crisis, some phenomenon, some development, some historical moment, some trauma. Right? These usually are the big questions. Questions like death and living with a purpose and accepting one's situation in life. All of these are traditional approaches to the essay. And so I want to go through some key moments in the development of the history of the essay. Now, in some of your readings, you'll be looking at this too, but what I want to do is talk about a few of them so you have some guidance to understanding them. Now, if they're, it's whenever you hear a professor talking about this person is the father of the fill in the blank. Almost always that's not quite accurate. It's often probably mostly accurate, but never quite completely accurate, and that's the case here. A fellow by the name of Michel de Montaigne in the 1500s in France is the person we generally give credit for being the first essayist in the way that we think of what the essay is. And he was always asking the question, who am I? But in asking that question, he wasn't just, navel gazing, although he did do a good bit of that. I mean, he even wrote about his own bathroom habits. But he always did these things in order to explore concepts of a higher order. Like, who am I? But in doing that, he would want to know, how does the mind work? My mind works this way. Does it work that way generally? And so he would also make significant use of the examples of others, even though, he was primarily using his own life and experience to explore the big ideas. So, uh, so he would take a topic, but then use that topic to go after sometimes wildly different topics. Uh, so, uh, so here, let me read you a passage that is from the opening of his book called Essays. And remember, when he used that title, he was essentially titling his book Attempts. Here's how it begins. This book was written in good faith, reader. It warns you from the outset that in it I have set myself no goal but a domestic and private one. I have had no thought of serving either you or my own glory. And that's key, right? Because he's saying, I'm not trying to make myself look good here. He goes on, my powers are inadequate for such a purpose. I have dedicated it to the private convenience of my relatives and friends, so that when they have lost me, as soon they must, they may recover here some features of my habits and temperament, and by this means keep the knowledge they have of me more complete and alive. If I had written to seek the world's favor, I should have bedecked myself better and should present myself in a studied posture, meaning he would put some spin on it if he was trying to make himself look good. He goes on, I want to be seen here in my simple, natural, ordinary fashion, without straining or artifice, for it is myself that I portray. My defects will be here read to the life, and also my natural form, as far as respect for the public has allowed. Had I been placed among those nations which are said to live still in the sweet freedom of nature's first laws, by which he means if he'd been born amongst the savages, that would be a phrase he would have used at the time. Today we would have called first peoples or native peoples. I assure you I would have very gladly have portrayed myself here entirely and wholly naked. Thus, reader, I am myself the matter of my book. You would be unreasonable to spend your leisure on so frivolous and vain a subject. But the truth is that he uses his exploration of himself to talk about what it means to be alive, what it means to try to, have a sense of self in a world that attacks the self. And those are ideas that everybody can can connect to. And so even though he says he's writing about himself and it's unreasonable for other people to be interested, he's being a little bit cute there because he's really saying, I'm going to be writing about these big topics, and I'm just going to be using myself as a starting point. But we do learn a few things about the nature of the essay at its beginnings that still have a lot of power amongst essayists. First is the sense that the essay comes from the writer. Right? So the writer is at the center of the traditional essay. Second, the writer is fully present, even when the writer is talking about someone or something else, because the writer's voice is the voice of the essay. And that's the third thing. The writer has a personal voice. Even if the writer is tackling really complex, even academic topics, you always feel the human on the other side of that essay in a traditional personal essay. So let's skip ahead to one of Michel de Montaigne's very quick imitators. Imitators not in content necessarily, but in interest in the essay. Francis Bacon, writing in the mid-1500s. Now he was interested in instructing the world. He wanted to tell the world how to be. He used himself as a topic very often, but he was interested, unlike Michel de Montaigne, who's like, you don't really need to be interested in this, but please be interested anyway. Francis Bacon was very clearly trying to say, hey, here's some ideas that I think will help you, but he very clearly also based them on some of what he felt he knew from his experience. So here's a short passage from his essay Of Love. The stage is more beholding to love than the life of man. For as to the stage, love is ever matter of comedies, and now and then of tragedies. But in life it doth much mischief, and sometimes like a siren, sometimes like a fury. Now, when he says siren, he's talking about a beautiful woman who draws men in. And a fury is an evil female demon type creature. He goes on, you may observe that amongst all the great and worthy persons, whereof the memory remaineth, either ancient or recent, there is not one that hath been transported to the mad degree of love, which shows that great spirits and great business do keep out of this weak passion. Wow, so he's pretty down on love, isn't he? He's saying that love is all consuming. It transports you. But the kind of person who can be transported by love tends not to be the kind of person who becomes great. That's a really interesting idea, and one that I think not very many people today would want to agree with. But then again, they had a very different idea about love back then. The idea of, say, marrying for love is a comparatively new one. Let me go on. Here's an example of Francis Bacon writing in his essay of marriage and single life, a related topic, obviously. He that hath wife and children hath given hostages to fortune, for they are impediments to great enterprises, either of virtue or mischief. Certainly the best works of greatest merit for the public have proceeded from the unmarried or childless men, which both in affection and means have married and endowed the public. Wow, so he hits that topic again. Men, if you want to be great, if you want to do great things, be single, right? Women just drag you down. Now, is there a truth in that? Well, let me give you my own personal example. I'm a professor, and I know highly successful professors who have been able to be decent husbands or decent wives and decent parents and still be highly successful, but not many. Of the most successful scholars and academics, most of them are single or married and childless. Why is that? Well, because being a good spouse and especially a good parent is a time commitment. And there are only so many hours in the day. I made the choice. I wasn't going to go for being a great scholar. I think I could have been certainly a better known scholar than I am. I'm working on my third and fourth books right now. I've got 2 published already. But I love my wife. I love my kids, and I wouldn't want to have been absent for them. So that's a painful one. That's a painful one. Can you be great and be a dedicated spouse and parent? That's a tough one. All right, so let's skip forward 150 years to a person who begins to sound a little bit more like the kind of people we try to be now. This is Samuel Johnson, writing in the middle 1700s. So we've skipped forward a couple hundred years. So he was kind of a humorist at times and kind of dark at times, and he sometimes wrote under a pseudonym. He called himself the Rambler. He was more like Montaigne in that he liked to be exploratory and personal, but he was also more likely to want to write about the outside world than Montaigne. So a little more like Bacon in that. So here's a little piece from an essay he wrote called Criticism. Now, criticism are everything from scholarly articles to film reviews or book reviews that get published, in good newspapers and magazines. This is what he wrote about the nature of criticism. Criticism is a study by which men grow important and formidable at very small expense. Meaning, people who write criticism write it because they don't do the art themselves. Ouch. He goes on, the power of invention has been conferred by nature upon few, and the labor of learning those sciences of creation, which may by mere labor be obtained, is too great to be willingly endured. But every man can exert such judgment as he has upon the works of others. Meaning, we can all talk about what other people do. And he whom nature has made weak, and idleness keeps ignorant, yet may support his vanity by the name of critic. Ouch, right? He's saying that critics criticize things, but remember, criticize doesn't mean necessarily be negative. It just means uh, provide a review of. But critics do critical work because they can't do the creative work. Ouch. A little later comes our next great uh, essayist, William Hazlitt. He was really interested in the human creature and in how humanity is a bit of a mess and really liked human contradictions or paradoxes. And so here's him exploring the concept of death. Perhaps the best cure for the fear of death is to reflect that life has a beginning as well as an end. There was a time when we were not. The time, and right, so he's saying that before you were born, you didn't exist, and the world was fine. So let me back up. There was a time when we were not. This gives us no concern. Why then should it trouble us that a time will come when we shall cease to be? I have no wish to have been alive 100 years ago, or in the reign of Queen Anne. Why should I regret and lay it so much to the heart that I shall not be alive 100 years from now, in the reign of whom I cannot tell? When Bickerstaff wrote his essays, I knew nothing of the subjects of them, nay, much later, but the other day, as it were, in the beginning of the reign of George III, when Goldsmith, Johnson, Burke used to meet at the Globe, when Garrick was in his glory, and Reynolds was over head and ears with his portraits, and Sterne brought out the volumes of Tristram Shandy year by year, it was without consulting me. He's saying all that happened before he was born, and somehow he's not the lesser for it. I had not the slightest intimation of what was going on. The debates in the House of Commons on the American War, or the firing at Bunker's Hill, disturbed not me. Yet I thought this no evil. I neither ate, drank, nor was merry. Yet I did not complain, 'cause he wasn't born yet. I had not then looked out into this breathing world. Yet I was well, and the world did quite as well without me as I did without it. Why then should I make all this outcry about parting with it and being no worse off than I was before when he's dead? So do you believe him? Do you think he's just as happy to consider the time after his life is over than the time before it began? I'm a little suspicious of him because a person who writes a book and puts the book out there is hoping for a little bit of life after death, isn't he? He's hoping that he continues to exist in a way after he's gone. Yet, even though in truth, logically, it makes sense not to care, we still do. So here's another essay about death that's much more current, the middle of the 20th century. One of the great essayists of the 20th century, and maybe the greatest American essayist still, a fellow by the name of E.B. White. E.B. White also wrote the occasional children's book, like the Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web. He wrote both of those. But he's really primarily known as an essayist among scholars and other writers. And so this is the beginning, the first and last paragraph of an essay you'll be reading called Once More to the Lake. This is how it opens. One summer, long about 1904, my father rented a camp on a lake in Maine and took us all there for the month of August. We all got ringworm from some kittens and had to rub Pond's extract on our arms and legs night and morning, and my father rolled over in a canoe with all his clothes on. But outside of that, the vacation was a success, and from then on, none of us ever thought there was any place in the world like that lake in Maine. We returned summer after summer, always on August 1st, for 1 month. I have since become a saltwater man, but sometimes in summer there are days when the restlessness of the tides and the fearful cold of the seawater and the incessant wind which blows across the afternoon and into the evening makes me wish for the placidity of a lake in the woods. A few weeks ago, this feeling got so strong I bought myself a couple of bass hooks and a spinner and returned to the lake where we used to go for a week's fishing and to revisit old haunts. So, he's writing about his childhood and his father, who's now gone. And now he's an older man. So you can see there's a cycle. He's already introducing some of these ideas of the cycle, but also, right, what do we have coming from this topic so far? It's a personal essay. He's writing it from first person. I did this. We had this experience. But he's also writing about life and growing up, growing from being a boy to a man. And, you know, he's going back to revisit old haunts. He's going back to look at the place where he was a boy. You know, you're all adults now. When you think about your childhood, it fills you with some strange and sometimes poignant and sometimes painful feelings, doesn't it? Even if it was a joyous age. And so that's what he's getting at, that human experience. He's talking about himself, but something bigger than himself. So this is the last paragraph of that same essay. After the calm, the rain steadily rustling in the calm lake, he used the word calm twice there, the return of light and hope and spirits, and the campers running out in joy and relief to go swimming in the rain, their bright cries perpetuating the deathless joke about how they were getting simply drenched, right? A deathless joke, right? Here he is in an essay significantly about death. This joke is deathless. And he's applying it to the idea of a joke about going swimming in the rain and talking about getting drenched by the rain. It's a bad joke, but people keep telling it. He goes on, and the children screaming with delight at the new sensation of bathing in the rain and the joke about getting drenched, linking the generations in a strong, indestructible chain, and the comedian who waded in carrying an umbrella. When the others went swimming, my son said he was going in too. He pulled his dripping trunks from the line where they had hung all through the shower and wrung them out. Languidly and with no thought of going in, I watched him. His hard little body, skinny and bare, saw him wince slightly as he pulled up around his vitals the small, soggy, icy garment. As he buckled the swollen belt, suddenly my groin felt the chill of death. Wow, that's a weird final sentence, isn't it? He's looking at his son about to go swimming in the rain, this delightful, lovely experience. And as his son pulls the already cold, wet bathing suit up around his little boy parts, the father feels that coldness and feels it also as the chill of death, because what does he know? He knows that he came here as a boy with his father, and his father is dead. And now he is bringing his son, and his son will someday be an older man and think of his own father who is gone. And yet, it's a poignant, loving moment that's also a moment of death. That's a complexity that only the personal essay can really get at. So as you think about beginning to write some of your essays, and I'll be giving you topics here and there, think about those sorts of things. Think about how your life connects you to larger topics, and use moments or aspects of your own life to get at larger topics. Because the truth is that I'm sure you're interesting. I'm sure you're really interesting. But let's be honest. Nobody cares about you out there, or me, right? There's a precious tiny group of us, of human beings, that a lot of other people care about. But if you can apply some aspect of who you are to the larger world, you can make your reader care not just about you, but about that topic. And because that topic connects with your reader, they will experience you and your life and care about you in that connection. So that's the key. Use your own life to connect to the larger world, and that brings people into yours. All right, so I think that's enough for today, and I hope that gives you a sense of what we're looking to be doing this semester with this course. And I hope you will stay in touch and let me know if you have any questions. All right, bye-bye.